الحمد لله الذي لم يزل عالما قديرا وصلى الله على محمد الذي أرسله إلى الناس بشيرا ونذيرا وعلى آل محمد وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وبعد. We'd like to thank each and every single one of you for taking time out of your Thursday evening / afternoon to join us for this special class by Why Islam. I have made a major goof up by doing it through the wrong Zoom account. This is definitely an Ignadalis Why Islam event. This is going to be part one of a comparative religious studies series about who is Allah, what is Islam, and who is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As all of you know, these are the three questions that we're all going to be asked in the grave. And as you know, Islam gives you the right answer, and living as a Muslim, it gives you the right answer. But if you don't have that ideology and you do not have the actions that back that faith system, then you will end up giving the wrong answer, which means that there are lots of wrong answers. If there's only one right answer, that means there's a ton of wrong answers, okay? By the way, the office that I'm in has jinn in it. I mean, there's jinn everywhere, so don't think this is a strange thing that I'm saying. Folks, we're gonna cut this from the recording. So if every now and then you see the light turn off and I slide off screen, it's just to turn the light off, okay? Hopefully I have a system in place to prevent that from happening, but I don't know. They're from the light, they're from the unseen, so we can only do the best we can. Anyways, yes, I know, Imran, I know it sounds strange, but I just give you a heads up, just in case the light goes off, I go off screen, the light comes back on. Khair, inshallah. So saying all of that to say, when we start talking about comparative religious studies, we are essentially comparing what we know to be the right answer with all of the ways that the answers can be wrong. And all of the way that those answers can be wrong stem around the three questions you will be asked in the grave. Who is Allah? What is your religion? What deen were you upon? And who was your prophet? Who did you follow? Who did you get this information from? So this is going to be the muqaddimah, the introduction, if you will, to this broader conversation. Our goal, bi'idhnillahi azza wa jalla, is to cover a lot of different religions and to compare them to Islam. We're going to have deep dives, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, not just by me, but also by some other people. I don't want to mention their names because I don't want to, I don't know if they're in this, if they're here with us or not. But we're going to have some deep dives by some different people into some different topics. For example, you ever seen a comparative religious studies class about Judaism or Hinduism or Taoism or Taoism or all the isms and schisms? Inshallah, we're going to try to crack all of that open, revolving around, again, these three concepts. Who is your Lord? What is the God, or in some cases, gods? What is the religion? What are the fundamental principles and practices of people who ascribe themselves to this ideology or philosophy, right? And last but not least, who's your prophet? Where did you get this from? How did we get here? So today, as a part of the Muqaddimah, let's just look at the notion of faith itself, right? And when we talk about the notion of faith, we want to look at it, and let me know if you cannot see the text clearly on the screen. We want to look at it in a very broad sense. So we're going to start macro and then work our way in. Again, for our methodology, we try to climb the mountain. So when we get to the top, we get to look at the full view. Okay? So bear with me as we get there. According to research collected by the American Psychology Association, the impetus, the stimulus, the kickstarter, the drive for belief is actually from our most basic psychological cognition. Within the social science of psychology, it's a quantifiable concept of the human mind and the human psyche that you are driven to believe in something. And these pre-existing cognitive drives are deeply embedded into the fabric of how we think. It literally pushes us forward. You see, this is divided into two categories, which then has subcategories that we have a lot of social scientific research to back. So don't think that whenever we say, notice I'm not using the word fitrah. As Muslims, we know the word fitrah, that humans have a pre-existing disposition to belief in a higher power, right? That higher power being Allah. But with time, with culture, with exposure and desires, that fundamental, pure core belief that drives you to understand and seek out a higher power is corrupted and tainted and changed into other things, right? Or actualized in the form of Islam. These cognitive drives, if you will, are divided into two categories. For one, it's every single human being sees at their most basic core within their mind intentional design in the world around us, right? Now, we're not going to get into philosophical discussions on belief in God, such as a teleological argument, also known as the argument of belief for God by design. We will talk about it because that is a way that some people believe in God, right? But is that exactly how we believe in Allah? Through the intellectual design argument. What are the flaws of it and what does Islam tell us about it? That will also be a part of our comparative religious studies when it comes to who is Allah or belief in Allah and how that compares to other philosophies, right? Or even other religions. So we see intentional design in the world around us, right? But we also, within our mind, we strive to find out the basis for said design's purpose. Why was it made? Yes, we can see the intentional design within the world around us, but what is its purpose? Why is it here? These two thoughts, intentional design, purpose for it being created, these two thoughts come together and merge on what drives us to believe in something. There were a series of studies done by Dr. Deborah Kellman at Boston University, and she determined that even small children, right? Even small children, and this is for those of you who are taking notes, put that D there, tend to believe that even the most trivial elements of the natural world have some intrinsic purpose to it. Even small children, when they see things, and developmental psychology is fascinating and amazing. We learn so much about the way human beings think. I know, especially in the socio-political climate and racial unrest that we have in our own country. There was a video that's been circulating. If you wanted, if you're in one of the mini group chats, and I'll share the video with you if you haven't seen it. But it shows, like, from a developmental psychological research perspective, even though the research is kind of flawed and the conclusion is thus kind of flawed, but whenever Black children are asked, and this was like maybe 15, it's at least like 20 or 30 years ago that this video was recorded, when Black children are asked between a black doll and a white doll, like a children's toy, which is the good doll and which is the bad doll? They said the black doll was the bad doll and the white doll was the good doll. So we use developmental psychology in order to understand the nature versus nurture, classical conditioning versus operant conditioning, and the things in our society that make us think the way that we do. So without any conditioning whatsoever, without any stimulus or without any prepping or coaching, the child, when looking at the natural world, sees that there is some intrinsic purpose in it, even if that purpose doesn't necessarily make sense. For example, children were asked why a group of rocks were pointy. Why do you think those rocks are pointy? And the kid said, so that the animals don't sit on them and break them. So the rock can't just be pointy for no reason. Even the child says that there's a reason behind it, right? We're not digging into the ethical conclusions to be derived from a child's understanding of why rocks are pointy, but it just goes to show that even when they look at something like pointy rocks, they think something about it. It does have a purpose for even being pointy. Or children were asked, why do rivers exist? Why do you think rivers are there? Ooh, so that we could go fishing. So that we can go fishing. Now, obviously, depending on the socioeconomic status of a person and what they're exposed to, what they have access to, and things like that, even that plays a factor in how they view the intrinsic purpose of the intentional design of the creation around them, right? But a study produced by Science Magazine that was led actually by Dr. Jennifer Whitson and Dr. Adam Galinsky, they found that people were more likely to see patterns in a random display of dots if the researchers first primed them to feel that the participants didn't have any control whatsoever in said random patterns. The researchers actually concluded the findings suggested that people are primed to see signs and patterns in the world around them, even if they don't intrinsically have any. So by saying, hey, look, we're going to show you a bunch of random dots, just watch this. Or even priming them with the notion of, we're going to show you something and that's going to have a specific pattern, just priming them a little bit and giving them a little bit of juice to say, look, Whenever you see these things, tell us what you think about it. They don't have any control over it because it's random, but they then try to extrapolate some greater meaning from it. It's a psychological response. We try to see signs and patterns in different things. Dr. Justin Barrett, who's actually the director of cognition, religion, and a bunch of other stuff in his title at Oxford University, he discovered that people also have a bias for believing in the supernatural, that people are naturally disposed to believe in something greater. And a part of me playing 4D chess in this little social experiment that is this class is I mentioned the jinn. The jinn are coming to turn the lights off, right? As Muslims, when we hear things like this, our brain just kind of goes to a different place. Really, and Allah knows best, but really, there's a timer in the room to preserve energy, and so it turns off. But it's easier for me as a person to explain it to someone else, seeing the supernatural in something to say, oh, the jinn are turning off the lights. And we have these little nuances in our language and how we speak about things, how we describe things, right? And even to attribute not just supernatural abilities, but even immorality to God, right? Even if they've never been taught about God, and even if they tell like elaborate stories about their lives before they were born, people refer to this in the context of pre-life. They see supernatural elements in everything, and this starts from a very young age, and as young as 3 years old. And what he concluded from this research is what we're showing is that our basic cognitive equipment, our brains, it biases us towards certain kinds of thinking and leads to thinking about not just pre-life, but also the afterlife. Gods, invisible beings that are doing things that we aren't necessarily aware of. And these are all themes, as he concluded, that are common within most of the world's religions. I remember like a short time after I took my Shahada 7 years ago, my niece at that time, she was like maybe 3 years old. If that, I think she was 3 years old. I was sitting in the living room with my mother, my brother, and my niece. And I came downstairs and I took a small, thin book. Like, it's not a book even thicker than this. Oh, shameless plug. Why Islam? A pamphlet. No, it's maybe like a few of these pamphlets. It's like a really thin book, but it was about the concept of Tawheed. It was about the concept of Tawheed. Now, keep in mind, she can't read, right? And it's an orange book and it's super thin. So it doesn't look like a Bible or anything that she's ever been exposed to. So she went over and she picked up the book, but she didn't even look at it from the front, right? Because she's a kid. She didn't pick up the book and hold it in the front. She picked up the book and she looked at it like backwards. Like when she picked it up and looked at it backwards. There was nothing on the back of the book. It's just an orange thing, right? It's just an orange, weird little design. It didn't have anything on it. Just the cover. Only the cover had print on it. I asked her what, just we talk to kids like they're kids, right? It's like, what is that? What do you think that is? Unprompted, unprimed, uncued, she said, without any stimulus whatsoever, this is a book about God. What made her know? It's a book about Tawheed. I knew that. I never use the word Tawheed in front of her. I had no intention of her picking it up. She just picked it up and she said, this is a book about God. Is that the fitrah kicking it? Allahu a'lam. But it just goes to show you. It just goes to show you that even whenever we are children, whenever we're small, these are thoughts that come to our mind. God is actually on the brain. It would seem that the fundamental makeup of our cognition that it drives us towards believing in something. There's neuroscientific research that supports the idea that the brain is actually primed to believe, according to Dr. Jordan Grafman, who's actually the director of cognitive neuroscience within a special institution. Anyways, semantics aside, this tendency, as he's describing it, is spread throughout the brain. Our entire brain is geared towards belief in a higher power, and probably it arouses from neural circuits developed for other uses. So I'm not going to read to you all of the scientific research unless you're really interested in sort of this thing. I'm kind of an type of thing. But essentially, they've discovered, and this research goes way, way back, and you can Google this, there's a God spot in the brain where religious thoughts and feelings arise, right? That like, the idea that got a lot of attention several years ago, that there's a God spot in the brain where religious thoughts and feelings arise, it's largely been rejected, sorry, just to make that clear. But what they did find is that it's not like one part of the brain, it's not one part of the brain that has a God spot, but rather anything that's related to belief in God, it connects to multiple parts of your brain. So your whole brain is one big God. Your whole brain is one big God. And in these different researches, different case studies and scientific experiments and stuff, they actually found that even when unprompted to think about God, the notion of God, it comes up within people's mind, or even a place where your mind, like your this part of the cortex of your brain, or the frontal lobe, or amygdala, or the pituitary gland, all these things that are normally associated with like maybe the memory, or maybe math, or maybe artistic design. Even whenever it becomes focused on said thing, like remembering this or thinking about math or art, that it still lights up the same way whenever the concept of God is actually brought up. So with that in mind, let's talk about the notion of disbelief. The notion of belief. Because it's easy to say, it's easy to come up with this kind of argument of saying, well, look, neurologically, your brain is actually geared to believe in God. That doesn't necessarily give a proper response to people who have used their mind to consciously disbelieve in God, right? So where then does the notion of disbelief come from? And how does it make itself manifest in the actions of people who adhere to it? Because these scientific, these research experiments that we are quoting from before, deals with how children, even at a young age, are essentially manifesting the concept that we as Muslims know to be fitra, right? So how does the person go away from that? The concept of atheism, it began as a form of philosophical scrutiny. It actually, the concept of atheism, it started as cynicism. There was a philosopher by the name of, I mean, people always jam their names, unless you hear them say their name. So I'm going to say Xenophanes, right? Someone is more is like, no, it's Xenophanes. Let's say Xenophanes. You know, I'm gonna say Xenophanes. That's all right. So he came up with this real cynical argument for, let's just call him X for short. He came up with this really cynical argument, against God, saying if cows had hands and if horses had hands, they would draw gods that look like them. Right? You see the cynicism in it, right? The notion being that anything that has the capacity to actualize what is in their mind will make God look like a feature of what their mind is. That evolved the cynicism towards the gods. Now, keep in mind these Greco-Roman, belief systems had pantheons of gods that look like them, right? In skin color, in physique, in practices, and what they did and what they didn't do, what they liked and didn't like. They looked and mirrored the people within the society who were constructing this pantheon of gods. That later evolved into a social critique that blended a form of scientific determinism with Epicurean ethical pursuit of what is known as ataraxia. We will explain that. It's just digging in. We went from the psychology bag, digging into the philosophy bag for a moment. So the integration of determinism with time combined with infinitism, which is that everything is infinitely interconnected with each other. Then you add to that the notion of nihilism, which is that everything fundamentally does not have a purpose, that everything is pretty much means nothing. It's flux and nox and nihilopilification manifest. One of the greatest symbols of nihilism that exists today, can anyone tell me what is the greatest form of social commentary on nihilism that exists in popular culture in the United States today? You send it in the chat. I would, if you know the answer to this, then we will make the offer for you, but we will not shame you for it. YOLO, that's a good answer. Half cup, 4chan. 4chan, oh my God. The living epitome of social nihilism in popular culture today is 4chan. That really got me. For the law of Mohit. May Allah bless you. I mean, the half cup is half empty. Yeah, now these are different euphemisms that we use to describe a positive way to look at it or a negative way to look at it. But there is not just negative, it's not just a pessimistic nihilism, right? There's also optimistic nihilism. Make your own purpose. I like that. That kind of goes in line with the whole YOLO thing too. or on social media, people say I'm living my best life, right? I'm living my best life. What does that even mean? I'll go ahead and tell you. No one Google this. Epicureanism, mashallah. Just do it. Allahu Akbar. The Nike logo is the epitome of nihilism. Just do it. No regrets. No regrets. I would say it's probably Rick and Morty, right? It literally pushes the popular culture of optimistic nihilism by having some scientist guy who looks at everything in the universe as absolutely nothing. So even in popular culture, I cannot stand Rick and Morty. You know, I'm just using it just to give you an idea that these symbols, they actually make themselves evident in our society, in modern culture today. So it goes from all of this, it goes from Epicurean pursuits of ataraxia to integrating that with scientific determinism, then combining that with how everything is interconnected, and then saying everything means nothing, to say that life has no purpose beyond life itself. And that is the fundamental core of what atheism now means today. Even though neurologically we're geared to believe in a higher power, with this notion, and as far back as it goes to 6 BC to today, now you see that the modern atheist thinks life has no purpose beyond life itself. We're only here to live and die. That's a very nihilistic thing, but it's also a fundamental feature of atheism. Now, Epicurus, he like the concept of ataraxia, not anorexia or ataraxia, okay? The concept of ataraxia is to be happy without feeling any displeasure or without feeling any disturbance. So Epicurus considered happiness, the definition of happiness, to be that which makes you avoid pain and that which makes you avoid emotional disturbance. So anyone who goes out of their way to say a happy me is someone that does not have anything bad happening to them. A happy me is someone that never has any form of like stress or anxiety. Well, that's an Epicurean way of defining happiness. It's not necessarily the way happiness is defined. Without turning this into a philosophy class. So going off of this notion, right? He said to be in the best form of good, this is ataraxia, to be happy, to be in the best form of good and to fully indulge in luxury and pleasure, this is what it takes to be happy, which means not only can you fully indulge in that which makes you completely feel satisfied, but in the path of doing whatever it is that helps you actualize pure pleasure for yourself, that means that I can't have anything in the way of stopping me from feeling that pleasure. Now, some of you may know where I'm going with this, but if not, just stay tuned, inshallah. Again, we climbing the mountain, don't worry. When we get to the top, inshallah, the view is beautiful. So these meta-ethical discussions on the concepts of morality and when it's okay and how you pursue pleasure and how that defines happiness, this all laid the groundwork for something that's referred to as hedonism, which is defined as, it's a philosophical belief system, but it's defined as the purest pursuit of pleasure as the highest aim of human life. So now you can see how we go from atheism, life has no purpose beyond life itself, to, but you should be happy with your life, you only live once, YOLO, right? To the reason why I live is to just be happy. So then the actualization of atheism, of not believing in a higher power, despite our natural disposition to do so according to social science, it then becomes the notion of, well, I'm just gonna live and be as happy as humanly possible, pursue every single pleasure that I can, and we're going to actually juxtapose this ideology of belief to why we're having this discussion on belief in God later. All of what I'm about to share today can be defined in one ayah in the entire Quran. Kudos to whoever comes up with which one that is. I'll give you a hint. It's between the 39th chapter and the 49th chapter. Say it again. Everything that I'm going to be sharing today can be summarized in one ayah in the Quran. Okay? About why we're talking about these different ideologies and how that compares. I hope this works. Yes. All right, I just have to use this. Oh, shameless plug, billboard campaign. I just have to use this to kind of re-trigger the thing and drive the jinn away, and Allah knows best. Now, so it's all summarized in just one eye. Now, so we have this concept of atheism. Is this for the Hadith? Don't just throw shots in the dark. By the way, Hadith is the 57th chapter, and we said it's between the 39th and 49th chapter. Surely you will die and they will die. Don't just send me random quotes. I want citations. I want the citations, right? So now we've kind of covered the history in a nutshell, and inshallah, we plan to come back to this at another junction and really do a deep dive into this and how it makes itself evident in modern societies. But we've gone over essentially the fundamental origin of atheism and how it makes itself manifest today in conjunction with nihilism, infinitism, hedonism, all the isms and schisms. But what about agnosticism? Historically, it is actually the concept of agnosticism is found in all Greco-Roman philosophies. You can find it in every single one of them. If you open Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, even if you dig into the Republic of Plato, if you look at the Socratic method of Socrates, take your pick. You're going to find it everywhere. But agnosticism also, just like how atheism kind of strained itself down into modern day hedonism, agnosticism also narrowed itself down as well. So atheism isn't so much YOLO in as much as agnosticism, right? Because it elucidated the existentialistic ethics of human beings. I exist, and what comes into meaning that I exist. So this actually traces itself back to what is known as apatheia, so which we will define, and we can see an overlap in that type of ideology with the modern day hedonistic lifestyles in the world today. This is important, especially when it comes to the concept of belief and how that makes itself evident. So apatheia, it means without pathos. So it means to be free from your passions. But all of this is the root of what is known as stoicism, which is a state of mind that is unhindered by passion. So the purpose of agnosticism is to be in a state that is not hindered by passion, but this is actually tied more to with regards to belief in a higher power, right? So it trades the notion of just being indifferent and not caring about anything, which I guess you could say atheists do because they're nihilistic, with the concept of mental it's been a long day. Equanimity, which is to be of sound mind, to be relaxed, for everything to be nice and evened out, right? So now let's take a step back and now as we're halfway up the mountain, inshallah ta'ala, let's take a deeper dive into the belief of disbelief. If you were to go to dictionary.com, Oxford Dictionary, Merriam-Webster's Dictionary, Noah Webster's Dictionary, any dictionary online, you will see that the word religion, it actually has many, many definitions. It's something that one believes in and follows devoutly. A point or matter of ethics and conscience. It is the body of a religion is a body of persons adhering to a particular set of beliefs and practices. It's anything that you use to govern your life, right? So sometimes whenever we begin to think about the notion of religion, we think that religion implies that you naturally believe in a higher power. But there's also the religion of disbelief in a higher power. Or twisting and contorting that notion of belief in a higher power to be something that's a little more in line with what you prefer it to be, right? Which is part of as well. So even in the absence of belief, that in and of itself serves as the basis for religion. So before we make it to the top of the mountain, because we're almost there, and you will see how we bring all these pieces together, let me ask you a couple of questions. The first is understanding the neuropathological and physiological stimuli of our brain. Understanding that your brain is wired to believe in a higher power. Why do you think someone would choose to believe in nothing? If you want, you can raise your hand and give the answer. As long as it's 15 seconds or less, we will not cut your mic off because, for the sake of time, we don't want to get khutbah on Thursday afternoon. And or if you want, you can type the answer. Understanding that our brain is literally geared towards the notion of belief in a higher power, why do you think someone would then use their mind to disbelieve? It allows them to live life as they wish. Desire. What do you mean desire? Are you saying that anyone who chooses to believe in nothing is just someone who drives themselves into the notion of I can't be free unless I don't like the, oh my God, answers are coming in quick. Oh, don't stop sending them. They don't like the limits of religion. That's actually really, but then they create a religion, right? Because by the fundamental definition, that's a religion, right? Free will, they can't see the higher power. So maybe the notion of not being able to recognize it is the reason why they do it. All right. Mr. Ahmed, we're going to let you go, but remember, 15 seconds or less, inshallah. Go ahead. 3, 2, you have to unmute your mic. You raise your hand, you got to unmute your mic. Say again?
Whatever they have a free will, right? They can choose that or not.
So. Oh, did you say freedom? Sorry, I can't really hear you. Type it for me. Type it for me, inshallah. Sorry, you know, it wouldn't be a Muslim event unless we had technical difficulties. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you that well. Go ahead and type it for me, inshallah. We'll read your answer to everyone. So because they can't see the higher power, Ahmed saying that's the reason why they choose to disbelieve in it. Well, kind of closed-minded, don't you think? Or the dogma, all right? They don't like the limits of religion or the dogma of religion. That's what Zayn said. Unable to come to terms with something that happened. So now we're doing a psychoanalytical analysis a psychoanalytical study of why people choose to, well, something happened, and I don't really like that, so I believe in nothing. Habituation of neurotransmitters leads to addictions. I see you got your little Psych 101 in motion, Ali, mashallah. They hate everything they know about organized religion. For saying that's a really good point that you made. Organized religion, right? So they make a disorganized one. Some even admit that if they were convinced of the existence of a higher power, they still will not bring themselves to worship him. Nihilism, Imran. They may be dealing with pain to the point they renounce a higher power altogether. So sometimes that is definitely the case. And that ties into a previous comment that we read. God is not how I want him to be, so there is no God. Ooh. But then if you don't even know who God is in the first place, it's kind of like you reject the notion of trying to get to know who God is, right? Before you even get a chance to figure it out, which will be using your brain in all the wrong ways. Maybe for control, okay, Sister Maria, I can understand that. Khidr said, fear of living life not revolving around themselves. I'm afraid of living a life that is that acknowledges that there's something more than me. Hedonism, okay, Nabil, free will. They want to be provocative. They want to be provocative. Jazakallah khair, grapes. What do you mean? They find it far-fetched. People begin to worship themselves. Ooh, Imran. Yeah, now we're getting closer, better, warmer. And now we're getting closer, better, warmer to the ayah that summarizes the purpose of all of this. I'll shrink it down even more. Before I said it's between chapters 39 and 49, and all of the guesses that you all sent before, it's wrong. Mansoor. Mansoor, you got it, but no one can see it but me and Foes, so I'm not going to share it. Have you seen the one who takes his desires as Lord? He didn't drop a citation, Urslan, so I'm not going to acknowledge. Mansouri only sent the citation, so we accept it. Now, you go ahead and Google where the I is. Okay, Khidr, you sent the Arabic, mashallah. Sister read that, she got it. All right, now only I can see the ones that you sent, so everyone else, you're going to have to wait till the end to know what it is. Barakallahu fikum. Now, so the second question, and that was a trick question, right? Because even when someone is using their mind to choose not to believe, they're using their mind to believe in something still. They're just deviating from the track that it's supposed to go towards, right? Unless I drop it. Hey. All right, yeah, you got it. And so did you, Ursulan and Sis Yasmin, you all both got it. MashaAllah. Oh, he dropped the whole thing. Allah Akbar. May Allah bless you. I mean, no. So here's my second question to you, and it's a two-part question, right? While the mind itself may be inclined towards belief in a higher power psychologically, what would then make a person reject that impulse, right? Why? How are these natural human inclinations, like, how are they made manifest somehow, some way? So I'm rejecting the notion of believing in a higher power, but I do try to believe in something. How is it made manifest? So if we use the example of what X said, that kind of gives you like a bit of an answer. There's no right or wrong answer. I just want to hear from you all and hear what your thoughts are on it. What do you think? Is my answer too complicated? When I read it out loud, I was like, repeat the question, please. Okay. So while the mind itself may be inclined towards belief in a higher power, which we know from psychology that that's true, what would then make a person reject 100% that impulse? Now, you may say, well, my answer before, the answer that you're looking for now is the same answer as the first question. Maybe that's true. But how are those natural human inclinations made manifest? Allahu Akbar. Sister Reda, that was actually a really good answer. She said, environmental influence. Environmental influence. Your ruh aspires towards fitra while the rest of you is from this earth, so it craves the earth. Allah. Now we getting too deep. Way too deep. That was deep, bro. That was deep. Your ruh, it aspires towards the fitra because it's the soul. Yani, it's not from the here, but this. While the rest of you is from the dunya, it craves the Allahu Akbar. Waswasa from shaitan. So you blame shaitan in this situation. The waswas from shaitan is what takes you in the opposite direction. Imran said, their upbringing. Their upbringing. So it becomes less of a matter of your nature and more a matter of your nurture. I'm gonna tell you why how we treat the nafs. Okay, that's actually a good thing to point out to clarification. The one who embodies godliness, in quotation marks, brought negativity to people's lives. So somebody in the crib that was super duper religious made you think negatively of like the concept of religion. That's also a really good point too, right? So that would drive you away from the notion of wanting to accept or even acknowledge a higher power. Well, the people that I knew in my life who were religious, they were all jerks and they were all super mean and they were completely rude. So when Sister Rida mentioned the concept of environmental influence, right? And even like talking about this nature versus nurture arguments, and Sister Maria added, yeah, like abusive priests, right? And Arslan dropped the ayah from, what is that? Surah Hashd, chapter 59, verse 16. Like the example of Shaitan when he says to man, disbelieve. And when he disbelieves, he says, indeed, I am disassociated from you. And then Shaitan says, indeed, I fear the Lord of the world. Even Shaitan says, I fear Rabbil Alameen, and he's outie 5,000. Like he pieces out on you, right? So it also ties in with what Brother Nasir had mentioned as well, this ayah. So to some extent, you see that the philosopher of old X, so that no one gives me a hard time about how I pronounce it, he was right to a certain extent, right? He said if cows had hands and if horses had hands, they would draw the gods to look like cows and horses with hands, right? But obviously that would be wrong, a wrong manifestation of what your brain should think. But that's also a testament to nurture, how you were nurtured to think about higher powers, nurtured to think that the higher power is like you. And that's why we have white Jesus. That's why we have, Black Santa Claus. That's why we have, what else do we have besides Santa Claus and Jesus? It's about as American as it gets. The Easter Bunny is the color of the rainbow, which I guess in today's age has a different connotation. So you can see how all of those things make themselves evident in different ways, right? My last question to you before we reach the top of the mountain, depictions of Miriam. That was a really good example too. Thank you. Depictions of Miriam, right? She's white in some places, she's black in other places, she's Asian in other places, but we know for sure she wasn't. Oh, mashallah. That's also a good. Hussein, he took a cue. He took a cue from that. He took a cue from the Muhammad Ali video that was floating around a little bit. Where Muhammad Ali, he's saying, like, he's talking as a kid, he's saying that I'm talking to my mom and I'm asking, Why is the king of the jungle, Tarzan? Why is he white? And the Africans who have been there all this time with the animals, they can't talk to the animals, but Tarzan, the white man, he can, right? So the concept of Tarzan, even Hindu gods that differ from provinces to provinces. That's also a really good point as well. The cultural, which is then the nurture element of how you manifest that inclination to believe in God. You can see how very easily it can deviate quickly. So my last question to you is, what connections can you see between the notion and origins of these ideologies that promote this belief and the world today? What connection do you see between those two? The notion and the origins of the ideologies of disbelief, from the nihilism, infinitism, scientific determinism, atheism, to the stoicism and the mental depression. Why depression? No hope. So we have an age where people are hopeless. But wouldn't belief in God give you hope? No purpose, Mansour said. That was a good answer, Jazakallah khairan, Ahmed. No religion can please everyone. So why take a religion in the first place? They're all the same by all being different from each other. The paradox of progress has made people soft, so the sisters' answers about environment has more of a pull away from the fitrah. Okay, Ali, I see you. You dropped your general psych quote earlier. Now you dropping the paradox of progress. Okay, brother, I see you, bro. Allah bless you. I mean, that's Ali Jawad, my guy. May Allah bless him. I mean, they know what is apparent of the worldly life, but they of the hereafter are unaware. That's from Surah Al-Rum, chapter 30, verse 7. That was a good quote, Arsalan. I like that. Hedonism, Imran is saying, hedonism makes people think that less material happiness is sadness, which has caused a surge in depression and hopelessness. You guys should be given the talk. That's a really good point. Hedonism, the pursuit of absolute pleasure, makes people think that the less material happiness you have, the more sadness you have, which has caused a surge in depression and hopelessness. May Allah give us hope. Ameen. Now, so let's get to the top of the mountain now. Let's get to the top of the mountain. What religion are we comparing today, Brother Isa? This was supposed to be a comparative religious studies class, Brother Isa. You didn't compare any religions today, Brother Isa. He just talked about psychology and philosophy and used a bunch of words he couldn't even pronounce. Brother Isa, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fiber optic religion of I, of me, of the self that exists in today's world. In psychology, in the statistical research of how people identify with their deen, what deen do you follow? Who is your Lord? Who is your prophet? These questions that we mentioned at the beginning. There's actually a new categorization of religious affiliation in the United States known as nuns. It's kind of funny because I jokingly call like non-Muslim nuns, right? As a double entendre between the delicious bread and because we call them non-Muslims, right? To be politically correct, we call them non-Muslims, which isn't necessarily, it just makes us feel better, right? But the actual term and phrase of people who have no religious identifier is nuns, which also, in terms of the mnemonics of how it sounds, also has its own double entendre. I know. I thought you said I thought you said nuns. No, nuns. Like none, plural. Nuns. Right. You guys can see my screen, right? I hope you can. There's a bunch of stuff on it. I took the time to write it, not for me, but for you all. Can you all see my screen? Foes. Okay, thank God. All right, alhamdulillah. Okay, good. All right, okay. So according to Pew Research, they collected statistics between 2017 and 2019. That the percentage of irreligious Americans they're 26% unaffiliated. They don't identify by any religion. 18% of them are not religious or spiritual. That's nearly a fifth. A fifth. I'm not religious, I'm not spiritual. I'm just living my best life, YOLO, right? Doing the stupid twitchy dance. Look how happy I am. Look at my stupid twitchy dance. My religion is TikTok. My religion is Twitter. My religion is Facebook. It's the Google Face Tweet Talk. This is my deen. That's the world we live in today. Some are spiritual, but they're not religious. How can you be spiritual and not religious? That's a part of a new ideological thinking, right? As Emron noted, what does spiritual but not religious mean? Lol, LOL. These independent poles of this new age ideology has surged since the 1990s. And in other research, there's actually positive correlation between the expansion of illicit videography, and I don't have to define what illicit videography is, right? You guys know what I'm referring to. Someone say yes. Illicit videography. Okay, good. No idea. Okay. If you don't know, then maybe someone can text you. Text a friend that you have in this class and they'll let you know. So there's a correlation between accessibility and expansion of illicit videography and the increase in irreligious people in America. Meaning back in the day when they were all just in stores and only available on VHS and then on DVDs, and you had to go out of your way to get to go to Blockbuster in the back room to have access to these things. And then when the internet exploded, and then 98% of all viable information on the internet revolved around taking you to links that the most frequented websites on the internet is illicit videography. As that increased with time, there's positive correlation to show that irreligiosity, the lack of a religious identifier, the religion of me, the nuns of the world increased, which is crazy to think about, and that requires its own class in and of itself. And you can even correlate that to things that we see within the Muslim community and the effects on that illicit videography has on iman and the ability to have istiqamah, steadfastness upon the deen. So what is the fiber optic religion of I? It's hedonism with ataraxia and apathia. I can do whatever I want to be pleased by whatever I want. See, Adi said, if Psych 101 taught me anything, it was that correlation does not mean causation. That's why we didn't say causation. We said positive correlation. Don't worry, when you get to Psych 201 or 102, you're going to find out. Because all of sociology is positive correlation. Like, for example, the broken glass thing. Neighborhoods with broken glass have higher crime rate. That's a positive correlation. It doesn't mean that crime rates happen because of broken glass. Got me? You get it? Make more sense? Good. So the fiber optic religion of I is hedonism, pure pleasure. Live your life and have as much pleasure as you can accumulate. Materialistic pleasure. The more I have, the happier I am. The more money I have, the more secular things I have, the more food I eat, and the more I sleep, and the more I just TikTok, stupid twitchy dance, and binge watch Netflix, Tiger King. As long as I can do that with ataraxia, without any emotional disturbance, like don't tell me that's bad. Don't tell me to spend that I can't spend 6 hours watching YouTube every single day. I don't want to hear that. You're making me upset. You're stressing me out. Or apathia. Look, I'm trying to keep my mind clear. Why are you bringing up all this stuff that's making me think about a bunch of stuff I don't want to think of? This is the fiber optic religion of I. This is the world that we live in today. According to the General Social Survey of 2018, 21.5% of Americans do not consider themselves religious at all. And 25% of them consider themselves to only be slightly religious. So more than half of the country itself that participated within this survey. By the way, these surveys have more people that participate in them than people who even participate in electoral votes for the president in this country. There's only roughly 30% of the country that even participates in electoral voting. These surveys get a lot more traction because people are less inclined towards political engagement, but more inclined to talk about their religion, which says a lot about the nature of this country, right? So many people in this country, they don't identify as religious at all. So now when it comes to dawah and religious studies, we have to expand beyond this cookie cutter notion of faith. Because alhamdulillah, we're Muslims, and you know, maybe our families are Muslim, or maybe you became a revert and became Muslim, and so on and so forth. But the world you live in does not have some cookie cutter design for how you can just talk to people. Because when you look at the statistics and you compare the ideologies of the world that we live in today with open you know, clash against even your own neurological design to believe in a higher power, what you see is that now, as opposed to just saying, if you, and when giving dawah, you have to say X, Y, and Z. Now, you know, we have to break new ground. We have to be trailblazers when it comes to how we push forward the notion of dawah and explaining belief in God to people. Because you know, these notions of faith and these cookie cutter like ideas, and well, I'll talk to you about this, and once I say this, then you'll respond that, and then I'll say that. We have to begin to explore the modern philosophies that rule the modern mind, because it's not the same anymore, and it's ever changing. People are constructing abstract views of God and deferring less and less to the more archaic and conventional sources of belief. And that means that our understanding of them, meaning the nuns or these people, and how we talk to them about who is Allah and what is God, it cannot be based on conventional rationale, because these new demographics of faith, or the lack thereof, are not from conventional origins. So their modern ethics are different. The way that they view right and wrong, it's completely different. Their modern activism is different. Look at how many people have gotten behind the Black Lives Matter movement. Look at how many people, even if they're a vocal minority, I guess, from what is visible or on social media or whatever have you. Look at how many people became anti. I don't even know what the acronyms mean, so I'm not gonna show how socially unaware I am in my lack of ijaz on social media, because I don't have it. I'm not going to pull myself out there, but the people who are anti-Black Lives Matter, they also became very, very clear too, at least with the realm of social media, right? So even how we become active today, it's not activism anymore, it's clicktivism. And all of that is a testament to our online ethics, because online rules our worldviews. And even modern spirituality. I mean, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. I'm not atheist, but I don't believe in God. What do you mean? I'm not atheist, but I don't believe in God. What does that mean? These are the types of ideologies that we're dealing with today. And as Aleister Crowley said at the end of the 1800s, and if you don't know who he is, don't worry. We're going to have a comparative religious studies class on Satanism, taught by a former Satanist. Don't worry, I know one. He said, the whole of the law is to do what you want. Meaning the whole of the law that you should rule your life with is to do whatever it is you want. The man who said, I am the chief staff of Satan. I am the 666. I'm the beast that the Bible warned about. That's what Aleister Crowley called himself. He said, the whole of the law is do whatever you want. And we see that today. So what we are witnessing are an amalgamation of belief systems driven by what? What word? What 6-letter word? Desire. Self has 1 letter too many, but I like where you were going. We're dealing with a belief system that is driven purely by desire. Now, you can say all forms of belief are driven by desire. You can say that. But how we talk about God today and how people understand that is through their desires. You know, I think God, I feel like God. You think God, I feel God. How can you have that discussion if it's based on your opinion and your feelings? And so to conclude, how do you give dawah to this notion? And what do we see in our own Muslim community to that? And how do you compare the two? And then how do you go from there in clarifying these differences to call them to what is right? This is actually why we need to know who Allah is the right way. And no, this isn't going to be a repeat of our Asma al-Husna class that we do every Tuesday, shameless plug at 5 o'clock CST, 6 o'clock EST. It's not going to be a repeat of that class, but we're going to know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is according to how the Prophet Muhammad and the Anbiya before explained it, and then compare how they explained it to how people believe otherwise. which is the comparative religious studies. Jazakallah khairan. Foes just dropped in the chat the Asma al-Husna class if any of you are interested in that. And then we're going to use it as an avenue to understand their faiths, our faith, and then how to call people to our faith. In this class, we're going to look at other notions of belief in God. We're going to Alhamdulillah for the billboard campaign. MashaAllah. Shameless plug. So other notions that we're going to explore in this class is not just doubts when it comes to belief in Allah, or not just belief in God, but we're also going to talk about doubts, and we're going to talk about the origins of other faith groups. So are there any questions, comments, concerns, additions, omissions, suggestions, or objections to anything that we shared today? I hope the view at the top of the mountain was worth it. بارككم الله رب العالمين وجعلكم منارة الموحدين اللهم. I know it's kind of psychological. Foes, yeah, if you want to plug more, you can. That's fine. But yeah. Again, this is just the muqaddimah. Just getting started. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, additions, omissions, suggestions, or objections? It's just the intro. Will we be going over the proofs of God and prophethood? Yes, we will be going over. Jazakallah khairan Khalid for your question. Will we be going over the proofs for God and prophethood? Absolutely. Yeah. Because once we start to compare it to other religions, now we have to make it crystal clear, especially when we talk about Christianity, where anyone can be a prophet. And especially when we talk about a world where literally the common speak of the youth, I really dislike the word youth. Can I call them something else? The common speak of the people in our times today is, oh, that's God. Like, yo, bro's a God at basketball. Yo, he's a God at that game. People call each other God left and right all the time. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Would you say that the increase in nihilism and hedonism and things of these sorts may be due to the lack of struggle our modern world faces? Well, you see, that lack of struggle is, Mohid, that's a great question. Could you correlate the two? Yes. But the thing is, like, we live in a first world country, right? So our problems are first world problems. They're not the same as problems that people face in other parts of the world. The fiber optic age does play a role, right? And you may recall from some of our old Beyond Health classes, like that, like the paradox of progress. As technology becomes more advanced, people emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically, they become devanced. That you can definitely say that plays a role in it. But now we have more accessibility to our desires. And the more you feel your desires, the more you see how worthless it is. And this is why Ibn al-Jawzi, in his book, Tib al-Ruhani, when he talks about like desires and he talks about the mind and he talks about intelligence, he says a person who is intelligent knows that fulfilling your desires is not actually an intelligent thing, but rather the intelligent mind is someone who suppresses and overcomes it. And that's why Islam gives us a way beyond our shahwat, beyond our desires. But you could definitely say the increase in nihilism and hedonism, it is attributed to our first world problems, right? But yeah, does Aqidah affect da'wah too much? Oh yeah, 100%. Because you can't give da'wah to the wrong Aqidah. Yes, believe in Allah. Allah is everywhere. Whoa, chill. You can't say Allah is in the creation. That's like a deviant thing to say, right? So Aqidah definitely plays a role in it. Like, we're calling to Allah, so how much of an effect does it have? Yeah, it has a huge effect. So you have to have sound Aqidah. This is actually one of the conditions of being a da'i, or call it to Allah, is that the du'at have to have sound Aqidah. And the more sound your Aqidah is, the easier it is for you to give da'wah. If your Aqidah is corrupt or tainted or vague, then it will be very, very difficult for you to give da'wah. But if your Aqidah is tight, is strong, it's tied to the heart, then giving da'wah is actually very, very easy. Because a da'i also is going to come across, someone who's giving da'wah is going to come across people with other ideologies, right? And especially those of you who try to give da'wah to Christians, atheists, some of them try to do this, but really it's a key feature of Christians, is they will start to give you da'wah too, right? And you may start by saying, I never believe Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And then with time, if your Aqidah isn't tight, they begin to untie one rope and then tie another. So it's definitely important. Great question, Maddie. I need about 90 hours to process. We'll do you one better. You have 168 hours to process. Yeah, that's right. So we'll be back next week, but we're going to go deeper. And again, this is just broad strokes. We're going to make it clearer than clear going forward. Please share the recording with staff. My connection was really bad, so screen sharing stopped abruptly and I kept getting in and out. We'll see if there's going, nah, inshallah, we'll share the recording. Animals are followers of desires. We shouldn't be like animals. We don't use our intellect. Yeah, that's right. What is ataraxia? Ataraxia is, I'll put this right once. The Epicurean definition of ataraxia, Nabil, is it's a state of being that is free of emotional distress. It's been used in popular culture here and there, like in different movies. They make references to it, but it's essentially like a state where you cannot become emotionally disturbed. If you feel like I'm ataraxic, like not ataraxic or anorexic, right? But ataraxic, then that means that you're sociopathic, because no person should be able to function while not feeling anything unless you're a sociopath. But that's some little psychology. How do we tighten up our aqidah? By learning it. If you want, you can come to the Sabi Kun class. We'll be talking about aqidah for probably the next 3 weeks. It's every Sunday at 6:30 a.m. CST, 7:30 EST. Fellas, if you have the time, if you have the time, you can drop the link. There's 2 rules to the class. 2 rules to the class. You have to be on time. You can't miss class. I think Foz is going to drop the link. Okay, he just dropped the link. Oh man, I still haven't defined what the salik is. How do we deal with stoicism mindset in Muslims? Well, as we continue to do this class, Abdul Malik is the comparative religious studies class. So we just did the introduction today. This is our first class. Stoicism, we can't just do comparative religious studies without talking about the ideologies that exist within the Ummah today. And you have ataraxic Muslims, you have hedonistic Muslims, you have nihilistic Muslims. Who cares about this life, bro? Kun fayakun, Allah did everything. Like Allah created everything. Who cares? You have, you have nihilistic Muslims. You have all kinds of Muslims. So the stoicism mindset within depressed Muslims, yeah, for sure, folks, that's definitely. So the stoicism mindset of Muslims of like, look, I'm just trying to keep my brain clear. Signed up, closed though the salik. Sign up, closed though the salik. I don't know what that means. I need to wheel of this. Signed up, closed for the salik. It's closed. The sign up is closed. Yeah. All right. We'll try to send everyone a link or something like that. It's so stoicism within the mentality of the Muslims. Now, keep in mind when we begin to talk about stoicism, it's a state of mind that is unhindered by passions, right? So the whole premise is to put your mind in a place to where it is no longer hindered by desires, right? Allah does not tell us to get rid of our desires. Allah tells us what is okay, how it's okay to actualize our desires, and how it's okay when it's not okay to actualize, right? Like for example, Islam doesn't make us become monks or nuns. Where we swear we do not have relationships with the opposite gender. Rather, Islam tells us to get married, right? Islam does not say don't eat good food. In fact, Allah says eat at-tayyibat, but just don't include amongst your tayyibats pork and alcohol, right? So yeah, everything requires context. Context is what helps with that. I hope that answers your question. Context. Stoicism is the opposite of hedonism? No, because Stoicism can fuel hedonism, even though Stoicism is meant to not entertain hedonism. Stoicism is achieved by not being hedonistic, by rejecting the notions of desires. Like, in order to have equanimity of the mind, you can't be indulged in passions. That's what it means to be a Stoic. And that goes deeper, but it's in the philosophy class. I think it'll open up when the actual session comes on. Khair, inshallah. Just keep the link, inshallah. And if you can't get in, we'll try to get you in. All right, last question. I was thinking of it in the opposite form, like not having passion for the deen. Ooh. Now that's kind of being a little bit more nihilistic, right? But I assume that would simply be fixed by learning more. Learning more can be a solution, but not even just learning just anything, right? You have to be able to see the beauty of Islam. Many people accumulate an immense amount of knowledge of the deen, and we'll close with this point. And this is actually a part of the reason why we are doing this class. Some people, they question like, yo, how am I supposed to know Islam is right if I don't know about other religions, right? Or some people question like, how am I supposed to really believe in Islam if I don't know what I'm missing? And we as Muslims today, we become hoarders of books. We become hoarders of shuyukh. We become hoarders of recordings, hoarders of YouTube channels that talk about Islam and merciful servant this and I love Allah that. And, you know, we become hoarders of these things. But even though that's the case, our hearts become deader than dead. We have access to all of the books of ahadith in a nice, clean website. We have access to all of these different forms of tafsir of Quran in Arabic and in English translations. We have access to so much, but our hearts become dead to it, even though we amass it, right? It's more than just learning and learning and learning and learning. You have to be able to see the beauty of it. And when we begin to compare Islam to other ideologies, other forms of theologies, other forms of philosophical ways of thinking, you really begin to see the beauty of Islam. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those whom He loves, and we ask Allah Jalla Jalal to help us to see the beauty of the deen and to share that beauty with others, because that's what dawah is. Dawah is not just dumping a bunch of information of queued up facts from your brain or some piece of paper or some lecture on people. Dawah is sharing with people the beauty of Islam, because that's what you're calling. أريتم وجزيتم ووقيتم وكفيتم وعن الشيطان نحيتم أحسن الله إليكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.